Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about some major spoilers that were dropped at the Comic-Con experience in Brazil. The Game of Thrones crew arrived on a panel to discuss the upcoming season, and some of them accidentally spoiled the fate of their characters after Season 8 is over. The Game of Thrones showrunners David Benioff and Dan Weiss took the stage in Brazil a few days ago for a panel discussion at the Comic-Con experience. The cast members Maisie Williams, Arya Stark, and John Bradley Samuel Tarly joined them for a fun Q&A session. They looked back on a decade of Game of Thrones and teased Season 8. However, it's not where some major spoilers were dropped. It's when Williams and Bradley sat down for a Facebook Live interview with HBO Brazil, which resulted in some great insights into how they view their characters, the show's evolution, and the spoiler we are going to talk about in this video. The most interesting was Williams' answer. When asked what has been the most exciting moment for Arya in the series so far, and she replied, "Some of the most exciting are coming in Season 8. So I can't talk much about him." Later in an interview, when asked if we are going to see more epic scenes from Arya, she replied, "We really are." However, it's not Maisie Williams who spoiled fate of her character Arya, it's John Bradley who spoiled fate of his character Sam. How did they feel about filming their last scenes was the question, to which Bradley responded with an answer that seemingly includes a huge spoiler. Many fans are convinced that Bradley gave away a big spoiler, and it's about his character Sam surviving to the end. Bradley said it'll be hard not going back to check on the character Sam. He feels like he's abandoning him. What this means is that his character survives the Game of Thrones, and it's hard for him to know that he's never again going back in Game of Thrones to check on Sam and his life after Season 8 is over. If Sam died, it would not be hard for him to never go back to check on the character. In fact, if Sam dies, Bradley could not even check on him and see how he's doing. Also, Bradley would not feel like he's abandoning Sam if Sam was not alive after Season 8, so there's that. Although, to be honest, most of us have expected him to survive, and now it's confirmed. Sam survives the Game of Thrones. Does this ultimately spoil that the living will win is up to you to decide for yourself, but in my opinion it's definitely not spoiling the outcome of the Great War. This revelation, however, besides spoiling fate of Samuel Tarly, might also stand as a confirmation of a popular fan theory in which Sam is actually the one narrating the Game of Thrones. Thus, he has to survive the events of Game of Thrones to be able to narrate it. Over a year ago, I introduced you with this theory in which the story of Game of Thrones has already been written down and is this whole time being narrated by Samuel Tarly, and the previous season hinted it big time. Before I show you a strong hint from Season 7 Episode 2 that is going in favor to this theory, let me firstly briefly introduce you with the whole thing about Sam being the narrator of Game of Thrones. Basically, I came up to this theory while reading John Bradley's interviews, an actor that portrays Samuel Tarly in the series. Bradley came up with a theory based on the object in the Game of Thrones opening credits that is identical to the, as he said, gyroscope that is hanging inside a citadel. John Bradley theorized and might have even figured out the Game of Thrones ending. Bradley said, "I think it could mean any number of things. One theory is that what we're seeing now and how we're experiencing Game of Thrones is Sam telling the story of Game of Thrones. If you take the logic of the story now, the story of Westeros, and the story of the battle for the Iron Throne, it would be a book in that library. The visual motive of that is you're about to be told a story. The sense of an idea of being told a story and people gaining that knowledge the way Sam is absorbing knowledge in the library. This is a great theory. When you look at it, each and every episode of Game of Thrones has started the same way ever since the show began, with the same opening credits. While we have always been wondering what one particular object that looks like mechanical sun is, the origin of this and one more object was finally revealed in Season 6 finale. Sam finally entered the library and there it is, chandelier-looking contraption that looks exactly like the astrolabe sun object from the opening credits that we've been watching for 7 years in all 67 episodes. What's the purpose of this chandelier-looking contraption in the Citadel? Just as it looks like at first glance, one of its functions is to reflect sunlight from the window high above around the room over mirrors, because the maesters who use and maintain the library would never risk having candles anywhere near the books. However, the most important function of astrolabe, or more accurately our armillary sphere, is to locate and predict positions of the stars and planets, in order to provide local time and more. This function is of the tremendous importance for the maesters of the Citadel, as it helps them to determine when the long seasons of Westeros officially begin and end, about which they then inform the castles and cities of the Seven Kingdoms by sending out white ravens to share the news. In this theory, however, the astrolabe and the changing map of Westeros that we see before every single episode represent the unfolding of a story being told by Sam himself. As it can be seen, the creators of the title sequence decided to place the map on the inner surface of a sphere with an astrolabe sun object at the center. The camera would then visit different parts of the map, while illustrations on the astrolabe covered some of the backstory to the show. As we all know, the Game of Thrones title sequence introduces every episode and changes depending on the locations visited in that particular episode. The opening credits consist of a three-dimensional map of the world, with the continents of Westeros and Essos located on the inner surface of a sphere. At the center of the sphere is a light source, effectively a sun surrounded by an astrolabe-like arrangement of rotating rings. The sequence opens with a close-up of the sun and the astrolabe surrounding it, while the most interesting parts are the relief details that are visible on the astrolabe in both Game of Thrones opening credits and in the world's greatest library, since those two are actually the same object. Relief details on that object are showing a volcano destroying a city while Dragonwatch is on, and several people escaping in a boat, a reference to the Doom of Valyria and the Targaryens escape from it. After a few moments, there's another close-up of the detail on the astrolabe, this time showing the Stark Direwolf, Lannister Lion, Baratheon Stag engaging the Targaryen Dragon in combat, a reference to Robert's Rebellion. The last close-up of the relief detail on the astrolabe, which is also the ending of the title sequence, is now showing the animals representing the various noble houses of Westeros, bowing to the victorious Baratheon Stag. The Game of Thrones logo then appears over the astrolabe with the heads of a dragon, wolf, lion, and a stag emerging from the side of the logo. Season 6 provided us one more proof that is going in favor to this theory. When Sam arrives at the Citadel, he is greeted by Maester, who uses a distinctive pair of glasses to read the text in front of him. Those glasses, to be exact, its lenses, we have most probably seen in each episode of Game of Thrones in the opening credits. As we can see in every title sequence, while zooming in on the city of King's Landing and while zooming out of the wall, the map is actually seen through lenses that appear to be just like those glasses. Now let's see how this theory might have been confirmed or at least hinted in Season 7. While Archmaester Rebros and Sam were gathering books in the Citadel library, Archmaester said a line that seems to be a strong hint for Sam truly being the narrator of Game of Thrones. Epic fantasy novels, A Song of Ice and Fire, which was later adapted into the HBO series Game of Thrones, most certainly does sound more poetic. This marks the biggest hint that Game of Thrones series might end with old Sam looking up from a book as he finally reads the whole story. This would mean that all the events that we've seen and all the events that we're about to see had already taken place, and they were actually written in Sam's book that he is reading to someone. Don't you think George R. R. Martin would fit perfectly as the old Sam who is looking up from a book as he finally reads the whole story to either little Sam or Jon and Dany's child, or even to both of them? While this would be Martin's first appearance in Game of Thrones, it most certainly would not be the first time the showrunners decided to pay their respect towards George throughout the show, even though this would be the most important and the most noticed one. In fact, the showrunners already mentioned George R. R. Martin and his genius mind several times throughout the show. I'm sure there are a few among us that remember Mockingbird, the blue-eyed giant that is, according to some stories in Westeros, the reason why the sky is blue, as according to a legend, an entire known world is a tiny object floating in the eye of Mockingbird. However, in A Song of Ice and Fire novels, there's no legend about the sky being blue, because the entire world is in the eye of a blue-eyed giant named Mockingbird, nor any comparable fable. With this being said, it's pretty easy to conclude that Mockingbird is a meta-narrative reference to the author George R. R. Martin, since the entire fictional universe originated inside of his head. George R. R. Martin was already supposed to play a role in Game of Thrones when he filmed a cameo appearance in an unaired pilot episode of Game of Thrones as a background Pentoshi merchant. Having in mind that he was already supposed to appear in the series, George R. R. Martin portraying Old Sam in the last scene of Game of Thrones series most certainly doesn't seem to be out of the realm of possibilities. Additionally, during one interview, Martin said that if he was in the story, he'd probably be Samwell Tarly. He's a great character, Martin said. Tyrion might be who I want to be, but Sam is probably closer to who I actually am. The fat kid who likes to read books and doesn't like to go up a lot of stairs. Long story short, it's been hinted and foreshadowed that Game of Thrones would end up with an old Sam looking from the book as he either finishes reading or writing all the events. The only problem fans have with this theory of Sam being the narrator of Game of Thrones would be its credibility. If all of these were events written in Sam's book, can we really believe everything that's been told to us? Are the Starks really the good ones, and are the Lannisters truly the villains of the story? What fans are trying to say is that Sam's look on the events could be biased towards the Starks and Jon Snow, and therefore the events might have not happened exactly as we've been told. However, if this theory does in fact come true, if Game of Thrones truly ends with old Sam narrating the Game of Thrones to someone with George R. R. Martin portraying him, I can tell you for a fact that we can believe that all the events happen just like it's been told to us, without Sam being biased towards the Starks and Jon Snow. How do we even know that Sam even knows exactly all the events when he's not even been in most of them? For example, how would Sam know the conversation between some characters when he's not even been anywhere close to them? Well, he is Bran, the only person who can go back in time and see whatever Sam asked him to see, which is exactly what happened in Season 7 when Sam asked Bran to check if the marriage between Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark actually happened. In conclusion, this John Bradley's theory that's supported with few proofs definitely sound interesting. And after all, what better way to end Game of Thrones than with George R. R. Martin himself, the one who created this world in the first place?